Wait for Apple time to click. Okay, we'll call our meeting to order. We'll start with the invocation. Councilor Quantz.
Father, as we pause on this Monday before the birthday celebration of our nation, help us to keep in mind the cost of freedom. Not just the cost that comes from sacrifice and war, but the cost that comes from every citizen being willing to be involved. We thank you for the people that are here this evening in this chambers that are willing to be involved in the business of the city. We thank you for the people up here at this table who are willing to be involved in this city. We also thank you for the many employees that we have and how they put their best feet forward every day in order to represent us. Help us to never take our freedoms lightly. Help us to keep in mind that to have freedom, it involves sacrifice and integrity, and help us be models of that in our roles as city councilmen and women. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And again, thank you, Diane. That was well said. I heard it mentioned down the road here, so appreciate that. All right, let's move into the minutes of June 3rd meeting. Those have been presented. I'll ask if there are any additions or corrections to the minutes.
I move to accept.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. And let the minutes reflect Councilor Dobbins is absent tonight.
Thank you.
So there are 6 members and formal action will be required. 4 votes will be required for formal action. All right, and welcome to all our visitors tonight. Thank you for taking your time on a very hot evening. It's a little cooler in here, so hopefully a little more comfortable. We'll start with the reports. We'll start with the May Fund report. Lynn has presented that. Are there any questions, or Lynn, anything to look at?
No, next one will be a lot larger in the balances because we got our June distribution.
June distribution, very good.
That was my question. I wondered if it was reflected in this one or the next one. So you answered my question.
I read your mind.
You're good at
I was looking at some of those balances thinking, okay, hopefully it's not in there.
Yeah. Well, it comes pretty quick. Our property taxes are due in May, and they turn them over in June, is that correct? Was it late June?
Late June.
Yeah. All right. All right. Then you also presented the investment report, Lynn, that shows the different funds, the maturities of the investments. Again,
Yes.
we're laddering a lot of our investments with UMBA, or actually Baker Tilly now. It's handling our investment strategy, and looks like we're approaching 3% on 12-month investment.
So the investments that triggered this new report, plus it's the end of the quarter, were the Warsaw PVD bonds for 13 and 15, as well as we invested the reserve of the Warsaw Commons. That was $124,400, plus the cemetery perm, which is $500,000. So we got a little over $1 million in a new investment. And Merchants Bank won that bid at 2.88% for 24 months. And we were advised that the interest rates probably are going to start ticking down.
All right, so there you have it. There's your fund report for the day.
Lynn, when you look down like at the CD portfolio and you see one that's like a full 1% off of the others, and I know it matures in September, is that something that you take the initiative and talk to Baker and Tilly about, or do they?
We talk a few days before the investments are due, and they sort of give me a heads up, but that was also invested in almost 2 years ago.
2017.
So the interest rates did go up between then and now, but can't tell you what's gonna happen in September when this one's back up for,
I don't think they know what's going on.
yeah, I
Right,
don't think
yeah.
so either.
I just wondered how that works since we turned that over to them, and when you see something that's such an outlier like that.
They put out bids and then they have so many responses back and I try to go for the greatest interest rate
Okay.
or if a local bank's coming in,
Mhm.
just a couple points under, tenths of a point, then we'll go with the local bank.
I think we've
Okay.
been pretty happy with their strategy. We've been using them for 3 years now.
Yeah, about.
3 years, and they laddered our investments, and I feel that in such a low return time, we've done okay. Going back to the days when we were making a lot of money on interest, it's just not coming back too fast. I suppose we're not the only ones belly aching, so. All right. So, let's move into unfinished business. This will be the ordinance to vacate the alley. Petitioner is Kosciuszko County. I know Chad Miner is here to present.
Okay, thank you, good evening. So at the last time that I was here, I think you had two questions or two things that you left for me to do, to come back with a preliminary drawing. And again, as I said at our last meeting, I can't say with certainty that the proposal that's currently out there is necessarily exactly how it's gonna end up. It's what is the most current information that I have as to what the plan is, but of course, even if that's what we do for right now, it's always hard to tell what the future might hold for this, for the parking lot area. But, so I brought the preliminary drawing, and Lynn, does everybody have a copy of that?
Everybody has a copy.
Okay, good, okay. So, and I know that the big question last time was what's gonna happen to the alley? Will it be physically shut down or will it remain accessible? And you can see by looking at the diagram, the plan is to get a little bit more parking space by doing two rows of diagonal along the side where the alley is. So the alley, the current plan is that the alley would remain open, but it would be kind of a one-way and would have diagonal parking along there. And I know I had mentioned it last time, but anybody that drives by the Justice Building parking lot knows that that parking spaces are kind of at a premium at this point in time. So that would help alleviate that issue a little bit. And then the other thing that I think you had asked for me to do was to reach out to Chief Wilson and run this by him. And I did send him a copy of the preliminary drawing on this, and he indicated that I didn't talk to him on the phone, but we emailed back and forth. He indicated that he didn't have any issue with this layout, so. And I have a proposed ordinance with me as well this evening, so. Does anybody have any questions or?
So it would be open from Main to Fort Wayne going one way, or Fort Wayne to, yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have I have my diagram, unfortunately, I don't have those roads labeled, but that sounds right. I mean, it would.
Going south one way.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause I think initially we were concerned that it wasn't going to be there at all.
Yeah, so this would leave it open. Yeah, so I mean, again, it would be one way, but obviously if emergency vehicles or something needed to get in there, I mean, it would be accessible for them.
So when you're asking us to vacate it, basically you want to use part of that alley, so you're going to narrow it by making it a one-way, but it's not going to be closed completely. Is that fair?
I don't actually know that it will be narrowed. And currently, I don't think there's adequate room for two vehicles to get through there at a time. So I don't think it's going to be any I don't, if it will be any narrower, it wouldn't be much. And the diagram almost makes it look like it would be a little bit wider, but I don't know that the diagram's really to scale such that you could determine how wide it would end up being.
I mean, I understand vacating the east-west alleyway, but if the north-south alleyway is gonna stay there, then why would we vacate it?
Well, partly, I mean, in a way, it's really kind of becoming a part of the parking lot. So it's still accessible, again, for, you know, emergency vehicles or something of that sort could get through there. But the thinking at that point would be that it really would no longer be intended for through traffic. It would be more a part of the county's parking lot. Which obviously, if, you know, again, the whole thing is to provide for more parking, because that parking lot's busting at the seams as it is. And so if you're putting parking spaces along there and making that a one-way through there, you wouldn't really want traffic going through there, because that could be a potential for some sort of an accident to happen.
Well, basically, the county owns the whole block there anyway, so,
Mhm.
other than that, the alley, so.
Right.
So
Other
Chad-
questions?
Chad, currently there's an entrance on the north end and the south end. It looks like, to me on this diagram, you've closed off the south entrance and exit into the parking lot. So that's gonna force everybody to use
Fort Wayne.
Fort Wayne Street there
Mm-hmm.
to get in and get out.
Correct.
Does that need to go to the traffic commission, Mayor, or is that gonna work out to have that much flow in and out of there?
I don't see that it would have to go to traffic commission. I mean, we've got a couple of people here from the traffic
Yeah,
commission, and I
it's-
don't,
It's gonna turn into private property, so.
right.
Well, you currently have an in and out there at Main anyhow.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're forcing it down to that direction
Here.
to gain some extra parking
for two cars there.
spaces,
One
but
in and one out.
I don't know that it's gonna,
No.
if anything, I think I'd rather have the traffic shifted to that road than I would on Fort Wayne, or on Main.
I mean, I don't know what the fix would be if it went to the traffic commission, other
Yeah,
than,
I don't know.
really,
I just raised the question, just,
it's more of an inconvenience, I think, to those parking in there. It's gonna take a little while to get in and out at the busy time, but, you know, obviously, they still have to yield to get out on the road, so.
is there parallel parking on that street? Fort Wayne Street, currently?
No, not on that,
Okay.
no, yeah.
So egress will be now on Main, right? So on the old alley portion.
On the, yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, and then also the parking, Mayor, I can't remember Jack Traffic Commission, but can they add those kind of parking spots? That type? Those would be new. I mean, I know they already,
Within their area?
well,
They're existing.
there are existing, but they're gonna be putting new on the old ingress egress, and I don't know what the code is on that. I thought that there may be some restrictions on that. You know, you can maybe grandfather the old ones in, but when they wanna add new ones, I just would want you to check that. I can't remember, but,
They're not adding them on the street, they're actually adding them on their private property.
yeah, but they'll be backing up into a public street.
That's true.
That's the issue. I think
Oh,
there are.
you mean on Fort
Yeah,
Wayne?
those three I'm seeing on the ingress egress going into Main or out backing in. Just make sure that you can do that. I can't remember, I apologize.
Well, I would imagine they could bring that to traffic commission if that was a problem.
Yeah,
That
the
part.
vacation of the alley probably doesn't impact
Probably
their
separate
layout on the park.
issue.
And I agree with what you're saying, there's some issues with parallel parking backing straight out onto the road. I'm sure that's something that
Just
they
check
can
it.
address.
Yeah.
But our discussion tonight revolves around the practicality of vacation, the alley vacation,
Good point.
so.
As far as any kind of narrowing of that alley, that's really constrained by of the light poles. And it appears, the boundaries that they've got, or the lines that they've got, stop short of the light poles. I'm guessing part of the reason why they would need that to be vacated is so that they could take care of that grade work.
Yeah.
Because there is a slight difference in grade along that alley.
I remember you mentioned that when you were here last time.
Are there
And-
just parking bumpers along the existing parking there
I
along
think
the
it's a
alley?
curb, isn't it?
Or is it a curb?
I can't remember.
I don't know if I remember.
Yeah.
It's a curve with.
Curb sounds right,
Yeah.
but I don't remember exactly.
Chad, you're also saying it's preliminary. Is it 75, 80% preliminary, or are you just trying to give us an idea? The mayor's reminded me, good point, that it really is not about the flow, it's do we vacate? So, but I would like to know that, if you know that answer.
I think that probably for the time being, this is, it could change a little bit, but the sense that I get is that this is kind of what the plan is for the time being. Now, again, that's why I kind of preface that with, years down the line, who knows what, could a parking garage go there or something, who knows? I mean, but as for the foreseeable future, my understanding is this is basically the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is that if we vacate the north and south alley, then it's theirs, and if they want to close it off, they can close it off.
Right.
That's just the reality,
Good
you
point.
know, so.
Are we talking also, Chad, about the eastern half of the east-west alley? In other words, from the parking lot out to Lake Street? Are we vacating-
yeah,
You're asking for that to be vacated also?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that whole, yeah, there's a.
I guess
There's a
the
pretend
diagram
alley.
doesn't show it, but yeah.
There's
Mike,
a
page
pretend
4
alley
might help
right
you.
now.
Page 4 on your thing, it might help you if you see that, yeah. I think
There you go.
that's
Yeah.
what would help you, yep.
Right.
But like we said, it is different than other situations because there are no other stakeholders.
Right.
That is their property.
Yeah, I don't,
So
I
if
don't
they want to
think
reconfigure it and they're not in the way of utility lines, then I don't really know that we should deny it.
no, my only concern was traffic flow. Other than that, I think I'm good with it.
I know with regards to vacation in the alley, we need to have a public hearing, and we're going to do that right now, but I wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to ask Chad before we open it up to the public for their questions. Okay. All right, so I will ask, is there anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of or in favor of this petition to vacate the alley? Anyone wishing to speak on behalf of, come to the microphone, state your name, and list your reasons. Okay. All right, is there anyone here wishing to speak against the petition? Anyone wishing to speak against the petition or have any questions of the petitioner? Okay, I'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting and we'll defer back. I did have a question, and again, I know this is more for the parking lot layout. You show, looks like 4 handicap spaces in here. Chad, do you know, with the addition of spaces, would you have to add more? I assume you probably might.
I don't know that for sure, but that would be a good guess.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like there's 4 that are marked. So, okay, that's, again, that comes back to the layout, which is really not a part of this discussion. So, all right, any further questions of the petitioner? Again, this will be the second and final reading. What's your pleasure?
I move we accept and approve 2019-601.
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thanks, Chad.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. There's an item here for the Council Nonprofit Task Force. I assume this is an update. Who all wants to speak on behalf of the
Well, I was asked to bring this to the council. Counselor Clondaris is going to be not available for about 3 weeks in the middle of when the petitions need to be looked at, and so he was wondering if the council is comfortable with that. Or if we need to have someone else step in and take his place. So I'll kind of let you explain the situation, Mike.
Lynn, are they all, how many are in? And is the deadline?
The
was
deadline's,
Last Friday, right?
yeah.
Okay, and how many?
But we gave them I gave them until today in case something was emailed over the weekend and
Right.
nothing was. So
Okay.
we ended up with 11 requests.
11.
And that includes Warsaw Housing Authority and Housing Opportunities.
Only one of which will really be
Our
entertained
Housing
by.
Authority is going to go under contract. So,
Okay.
yeah, so the issue is, they need to be read through by.
Who else on the
task
committee,
force
Diane?
members. Pardon?
Who else on the task force?
Jeff and Cindy.
Cindy
And Mike.
and Mike.
Mhm. And,
I'd volunteer to fill in for you.
If you want to, that'd be fine.
I
okay,
mean, that's up to you, right?
that's fine.
All right,
What we were thinking is that if, we said this year that we would read through them, and if there were any questions, that we would call the people in and, with the task force, give them an opportunity to address those. That's the first time filling it out, so we didn't want to wait until too long. We're scheduled August
19?
19th. Yeah, August
Is the
19th
deadline?
to present to the task force.
That'd be great, thank you, Ron.
So, okay, thank you very much.
so it's gonna be a little bit more objective anyway with the grading system.
Correct, yeah,
So
there's a-
I
there's
think
a-
that's fine. I think having
Yeah,
three
there's a
makes sense.
matrix and,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And I can certainly read them by email or whatever, however we're gonna do them, but
Do you want us to load them on board pack so you all have access to them?
I don't think so. I think we'll let the task force go through them and then let them choose which ones to load that they want the council to see.
I meant just for when the task force is reviewing them, so we don't have to make a bunch of paper copies.
I think they can specify to just the task force members, and it
Correct.
won't be available to
I'll check
anybody
it out
else.
tomorrow if that would be convenient.
Well, we don't all need to see them because they're going to do the matrix, so it would just be Cindy.
Right.
That's what
and
we're saying,
what-
just
that's
those
what
three.
The mayor just said.
Yes.
Yeah, the committee, I think we can specify that only the committee can
Oh,
access
okay.
those.
Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah,
get that.
that's all right. It's all new.
Yeah, the pilot was, I thought we're going to hopefully be more advisory for the board.
Yes,
Maybe
you are.
help with that, that's the
And
goal.
once you fill out the matrix, you'll have
Yeah.
scores, and then you can be advisory towards us. So I guess the question, in order to not violate an open door policy, we need only 3 people looking at it. So you either need to give up your right to review them and give it to Ron
Thought I'd just.
during the review.
Yeah.
And then you, okay,
Does that have to be formalized in any way?
I think it's just noted in the minutes,
Yeah.
makes sense. So it'd
Yeah,
be
'cause-
Cindy and Jeff and Ron,
and Ron.
all right?
So Ron is going to be replacing.
And that's who you'll send those to. Yep,
Okay,
all right, thank you. All right, let's move on to new business, Resolution 190703. This is a transfer to engineering from capital improvements, so it's going from 402,444 to 402,310, and the amount of $15,500. And Brian, you're up.
Yeah, this is for the stormwater utility. A lot of our projects this year are very expensive, so we're not gonna be able to do many of them, but we would like to get some more engineering accomplished this year. So this money would cover 2 contracts that we're hoping to get approved with Christopher Burke, continuing on that south side drainage study. We're gonna begin looking at the park, the pond, what we can do there to bring that back to a fishable pond, what things we need to do to get that water to move through there better, probably stay out of the pond so we keep it clean once we get it there. And then the second project was Winona Lake's getting ready to look at a roundabout there at Argonne and what's it, Winona? And so we want to maybe join in on that project. We have a big 36-inch, excuse me. We have a big 36-inch storm line that comes down McKinley and goes west on Winona and then goes to Winona Lake right next to some condominiums. If we ever had to service that, there's no way we could, because it's a 36-inch pipe almost against the foundation of that building. So we would look at going east with it towards that roundabout, and then with Winona Lake, we would share an outlet to the lake. And we'd also potentially be able to put in a stormwater feature that would hopefully help with the lower, like one-year storms, help do some water quality improvements on the higher frequency storms. There's not enough room to treat the 100-year or anything like that, but at least we could do the more frequent, smaller storms. So that would be the two engineering projects we'd like to cover with this transfer.
Questions?
I know from the park board, it would be helpful to have the Kelly Park one completed as we're looking at finishing the sledding hill over there, putting in a new playground, expanding the court for the pickleball court. It would be good to know where drainage tiles are gonna go through, so we don't put something in and then have to have it dug up again. So, from our standpoint, it would be helpful.
Brian, over on Winona, I know at some point they were discussing like a grit separator, because when there's a big rain in the spring and everything comes rushing down, there seems to be a lot of debris that gets into the lake. And I know at one point they were talking about a grit separator in that area. Any thoughts on that with this project? I know I haven't really talked to you about the details of it, but
That is something we could definitely talk about. I know the, sort of what we're looking at putting in, sort of like a retention pond. So the water would come down that pipe, hit this pond, and a lot of that debris would have an opportunity to settle out. In a heavy storm, it would not probably be big enough to slow it down enough, but these more frequent storms, we're hoping that we could see some significant water quality improvement. That's part of the engineering to see if it's worth doing or not, but
okay, well, it may, that retention pond may function as a grit separator.
it absolutely would.
Yeah,
in the
okay,
storm.
so I'm sure James and them have thought about that. Okay, any other questions?
When you said that you have a 36-inch pipe running along the foundation of that building, what building are you referring to? The Collier building?
No, it's one of the condominiums right there
Condos.
on the lake.
Oh,
I
okay.
forget which complex it is.
It might be
It's
Schaffner's.
in round ones there.
It comes down McKinley and makes a 90-degree turn and goes west.
Yeah.
And then it takes another 90-degree turn and goes out to the lake. And I honestly don't know how they built that building as close as it is to that pipe, but
That was my question.
if we ever have a problem, it would be bad.
Well, technically, on the other side of that, that's actually a public access, because that was the old, like camp cottage thing. So there's actually a walkway along there for a few feet that people that can get in there. Yeah, but, so it may have been because it was built adjacent to public property.
It sounds to me like this is money well spent. I would make a motion to pass Resolution 2019-0703.
Second.
Okay, any further discussions?
Thank you, Brian.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right,
Thank you.
Resolution 2019-0702. Lynn, this is kind of finalizing the encumbrances from the 2018 budget into 2019, making some adjustments, and the revised encumbrance amount is on the right.
Correct, and these are amounts that were not used from what was encumbered over. So say someone had encumbered $100 and they only used 89, so there's $11 that wasn't used, so it was just liquidated, so it's liquidated funds. And we have to do this in preparation for the budget, then for next year as well.
So the adjustment in the middle column is funds that will not be needed. Those are
Correct.
the liquidated funds
Correct,
with your action tonight.
And they go back into those funds.
correct.
Pretty good chunk of money.
Questions?
I move to approve 1972.
A second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Item number 3, I'll turn back to the council president, discussion of hiring a council attorney.
Okay, well, I've been approached by several of you wanting to have an open discussion about whether or not the council wants to hire their own attorney. Indiana code does allow for that. It's, one, not an employee, it would be a contract, that council can, negotiate on their own. However, it does need to be discussed at a public meeting in order not to violate any open door policies. And so I think we can look at this discussion in 2 parts. I think first we need to have a discussion about hiring an attorney, what that person would be used for, why we might want to do that, and then move on to how we might go about that and some of the parameters for that. So I would like to hear from people on the council, everyone if possible, just what they think about hiring an attorney, and what they would foresee that person might be used for. At this time, we have a city attorney that we have access to, and we are paying a retainer for, and we also pay for the AIM attorney down in Indianapolis that we also have access to. So we have 2 attorneys we have access to, and then this would be a 3rd attorney. So I think it's important for the taxpayers to discuss why we would do that and why we feel the additional expense to them is or is not necessary.
Well, I personally feel that there's once in a while I'd like to ask a question of somebody, attorney. And I know, I like Scott, don't get me wrong, our city attorney but he's strictly for standing up for the mayor. And I think there's questions once in a while that we need answered. And I don't think he feels comfortable answering them.
You're welcome to respond to that if you want to.
I think there is always a possibility that could be a conflict. It's not been any surprise. I've spoken to each of you, I think, about the fact that my first loyalty is to the mayor's office and to the mayor. And that there's no secrets with me that I keep from you from the mayor. It's what's discussed with me is generally discussed with the mayor. And I think that's my duty, is to certainly advise the mayor, but I think I've tried to advise each of you with any questions that you've had. So I don't know that I feel uncomfortable answering questions that you come to me with, but certainly if you believe there's a conflict, or if I believe there's a conflict, or if the public would believe there's a conflict, the rules of ethics of attorneys say that even if it's an appearance of a conflict, that I shouldn't be involved in maybe playing both sides if there's both sides of the fence. Certainly the statute allows for the hiring of an attorney for the Common Council. I had this discussion. There was recently a continuing legal education that I went to down in Indianapolis, and I knew this was something that had been bantered about, and I spoke with many different attorneys down there. I think it would be a little bit unique for our size of an attorney, our size of a city, for there to be a separate attorney for the council. I think it'd be fairly unprecedented for us to do it. And I think it's a little unique that a full Republican council might ask for a separate attorney. Then the mayor's also Republican. So I think there's been some partisan reasons that sometimes other cities have had the need for 2 attorneys, but there could always be opportunities for there to be conflicts, and that's not generally for me to decide only. It's if you guys believe there's a conflict, then there would be a conflict, and So the statute allows it for a reason. I just think it would be unusual for our size of a town to have that, of a city to have that.
So I want to say that, first of all, there's certainly, in fact, not only the council, but the clerk treasurer does have the right to hire an attorney as well, and that's statutory. So there's no pretense here that I'm against a council attorney. But to what Scott said, kind of the history is the Class 2 cities in Indiana, the council, and I think typically the council president is the individual who presides over the council meetings. And the council needs representation to come up with ordinances, agenda items, as the council president controls the legislative agenda of the council in a second-class city. Most second-class cities have council attorneys. Third-class city, the mayor is the one that presides over the meeting, sets the legislative agenda, and the city attorney is the one who basically handles the agenda items as far as resolutions and ordinances. Now, obviously, the council could come up with a resolution or an ordinance, but I would present it to our city attorney to review before he put it on the agenda. And that's, again, as a third-class city, the mayor being the presider over the meetings, the council meetings, essentially, that's what our attorney is used for. Again, second-class cities, it's a different situation, and I don't think we should confuse that. But nonetheless, that's just a little history, because I've done a little research on it too, and I've kind of heard the same thing Scott has, that it's not something that's really done in a third-class city, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And I'm not trying to stand in anybody's way. I don't want to spend the money and basically duplicate the services and have the city attorney talking to the council attorney and basically just agreeing hand in hand as things go through. But if there's a legitimate conflict, I think that the council should have the opportunity to talk to somebody. I would ask the council, has anybody ever discussed any issues with the AIM attorney, Jody Woods? Jody is a former city attorney from City of Greenwood, and is a great resource. I think we pay $8,000 a year in AIM dues, and that's part of that. The other thing Diane mentioned, I wanted to add to, Luke Britt has encouraged anyone that has a question on freedom of information requests or public access to call him. He's an attorney that handles those specific areas. So essentially there's 3 resources that we already pay for or is available to our council. But again, I understand there may be, if none of those 3 can handle it, there could be a reason to consider the council having someone they can vet an issue to that seems to be conflicting.
Mayor, does the AIM attorney have specialties, or what exactly is their role? What
The
do
what
they-
attorney?
The AIM attorney.
Well, I might be able to help with that. So, one really nice thing about AIM is this Jody Wood is in contact with everybody like me in the state, whether it's bigger cities, smaller towns. We all seem to go to her with questions. You know, there's a lot of information shared on the AIM media websites with people with questions about how should we proceed, and other attorneys from other towns answer questions I may have, or I may be able to fill in with answers for other cities. But she's always been available for myself to contact either by email or by phone, and I think she's incredibly good. I don't know if you guys have had contact with her, but it's what she's done for a living for many, many years, and
Does she serve at the pleasure of the administration?
of the mayor.
Elected officials.
Any elected official.
So is there a potential conflict there between council and the administration using her?
I would think not. I think the difference between her and I is I make no bones about, I share with the mayor everything, you know, I think that's my job. And
Yes.
I'm not sure she has the same thing. I think she would be a little different in that, but I can't speak for her. I would think if you called her about a question, she would be more to answer your question. But she doesn't set policy for this city.
I use her when I have a question, when Mike was here, if there was something that I didn't understand, he couldn't explain to me, for whatever reason, I've called her and said, Jody, this is what I'm being told, how's this play? And she gets those same questions from all the members, 100 and some communities in the state of Indiana. And I'm sure she would take council call, and obviously, we're not looking at political questions, we're looking at questions of policy. And I think she was Greenwood City Attorney for more than 10 years, if I remember correctly.
Well, I think additionally, the thing that makes her really great is she's just immersed in it,
That's all she does.
She has contacts with everybody as well, so I think that's what, so she's intimately qualified, but as far as what secrets she may keep, or if there's conflicts or other things, I can't speak for her on that, but.
I can't imagine that if a conflict did arise, that she could serve both sides of that conflict, so,
She serves the elected officials in the state of Indiana.
yeah. I've talked to her before. She is very sharp. She's very good.
Hopefully when you get down to a question for an attorney, can be an opinion, but the interpretation of the statute, you've got somebody that's got the knowledge that she's got, and these questions, I always try and get her, and she's always heard it before. She's very good at what she does. So I would just say that I think that that's a resource that certainly you don't want to underestimate.
I've reached out to her several times, and she's always given me good
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, I've spoken to her. She is good.
And I've just worked with her on the state level, and I work on the state environmental committee. She's actually helped us draft some bills that became law, so.
Well, I have no doubt she's probably very good on policy and at what she does. And Scott, you and I have worked in the past, earlier in the year, and I appreciated working with you. I found you to be very upstanding, ethical, trustworthy, and I appreciated the fact that I could come and talk to you. I do feel, however, that there are times when it would be nice that any one of us on this side could call an attorney and ask some questions, get a little guidance perhaps. I don't see this person being a full-time employee. I don't think we're going to be spending a lot of money. It would just be a resource for us to be able to tap into on an as-needed basis. And I would like to pursue it myself. I have talked to several attorneys.
Let's hold off on that, if
Okay.
it's okay, and just discuss the reason why. Is that all right? And then come
Sure.
back to them.
One thing I would say, I don't take any of this personal.
I know.
That you guys have all treated me great. I don't, and that's not what
deserve
this, I don't feel like this is what it's about at all, so.
It's not.
I even spoke to Mike Valentine when he was still here about the possibility of a conflict, and he suggested that we hire an attorney if that arose, so that.
In fact, he told us it would be a good idea to.
Yeah, I want to mirror Mike's thoughts too. I really appreciate what you do for Warsaw.
I've dealt with Mike Valentine more than anybody on this board. Privilege of serving for almost 2 decades now. And I have always felt very comfortable going to the city attorney to get legal advice. You could talk to Mike. Mike and I didn't always agree. But there was one thing that we did have going for us. If I had a question, all right, I would go to him and all kinds of help. In my 20 years serving on this board, I don't think I've contacted the state more than 5 times because of using the issues here, using the mayor's attorney, our city attorney, who's going to give me legal advice, and then working with other board members. At one time, Dr. Talmer, I was usually able to work through the political process and serve this city. My concern is adding another attorney, paying what would protocol be if we have an attorney and just one of us is talking to the attorney. Is that appropriate? Is that good? How does this work? I do know when people say we need an attorney, it's usually because we need somebody who can help us defend ourselves or help us with a complaint that we have. And to be honest with you, if my wife felt like there was enough trouble in some situation in our own family, and she felt like it was important enough to hire an attorney to defend us or help us with a complaint, I do know that I would want to be there with her. And I would want to make sure I'm hearing everything that is going on. So back to the complaint, the concern, my question to many that are looking this direction, I just don't see the concern. I have a city attorney, I have a state attorney, I have members of this council, I have the constituency that I represent that can communicate with me. I just don't understand why we would take these steps. I will tell this board too, in my 20 years, I have never heard another council member make a proposal like this. The first time, in fact, I heard it, I think it was during the mayoral race. Mr. Shoemaker, I think, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that you made some public statements that that might be a good idea. I heard from Diane, our council president, about a month ago that this was percolating. And then I did receive, Ron, a text from you asking if you wanted me to go visit an attorney that you and possibly others on this board have been talking to, new to me. And I can't speak for Joe, but I don't know, Joe, if you can remember when you served on the council with me years ago, if anybody ever brought that up, or let's do that. In fact, I think I was in on some conference calls with you with the state attorney after working with Mike and former Mayor Wiggins. So those would be my concerns.
The only comment I'd make about that is we actually have access to bond attorneys
Yeah.
and employment law attorneys that the city hires. So those are two more resources. And typically, when we had questions going back for as long as I've served, you know, we've voiced those questions to those attorneys and we're given them the responses. And, you know, we check up on our own, but calling AIM and talking to Jody was always a good way to back something up, or if she felt like you're not getting good advice, that's when the red flag raises. That's when, you know, and again, there's probably a time where if there's something that needs to be vetted that just is not getting handled the way you want it to be handled as a council member, I think it's important that there is somebody there. I just want to make sure that if it happens, it's utilized appropriately and we're not just being duplicative, like a second-class city that needs an attorney to run their meetings. It's just, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's getting a little more into how we might use an attorney. I'd like to hear from Jack.
Excuse me.
Well, this is the first that I've heard that we have had access to somebody. I'm a little disappointed that I'm just now learning this. But I'm, you know, here I've been on the job for 3.5 years. So it does present an interesting alternative. And I guess that's about what I've got to say about that.
I don't envision a council attorney being full-time
Oh, no, I
at
don't
all.
either.
No. In fact, I think it works just how you said. If there was a conflict, that's when that relationship would kick in. I think it'd be a part-time thing if we ever did that. And I think it might bring better government. And if that does, you know, the small price is well worth that for the people, for the taxpayers.
I'm a proactive person rather than a reactive whenever I can be. That's not always possible, but I think that it would be good to identify someone ahead of time so that if we find ourselves in a situation where we feel like we need an answer that we're not able to get through the other means, that we would have someone available. So to me, that would be a reason to have a council attorney. I kind of balk at the idea of using that person to write ordinances or resolutions. I think we already have ample resources that the taxpayers are paying for in order for that to be taken care of. So the only reason I would think that they would be involved in anything like that. And again, I'm straying now into procedure, but would be if we had a question or we didn't think we were getting good advice. And, you know, maybe I might just use the idea of this very topic. I had been researching it for a while, you know, at your request, and so it came down to, are we allowed to have an executive session to talk about this, okay? And so we started off, and we got opinions from 2 attorneys that thought that the way the code read, that yes, it would be because we would be hiring someone. We got an opinion from the public access counselor that no, you could not do this privately because you were not hiring an employee, you were negotiating a contract, which makes it somewhat awkward because how do you interview people in front of all the other people and those people hearing the answer from the person before them? And, you know, it gets very convoluted when you look at that. And yet, I think that taxpayers have the right to know if we're going to spend a third, you know, money for a third person or fourth or fifth. You know, they have a right to know how we might do that and how we might access that person. So I don't want to have our city attorney working on one thing and having our council attorney working on the exact same thing, and then we compare the 2 things and, you know, have that kind of thing, unless we have a real question. And I have found you to be very honest with, I'm not sure the answer to that. You've told me that a couple times, let me do some checking. And when you get back with me, you say, I called this person, this person, and this person, and this is what it is, and here's the code, and you can look it up, you know, and go from there. And I think, Jack, in answer to your question, no matter what happens in the next election, I would really recommend that everybody go back to boot camp again, because the council, the AIM attorney was covered during that. At that time, it was Nelson Shipman that led the discussion about how you access that, what you use the city attorney for, what other legal attorneys are available to you, things like that. And I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't have known it, because you know that thing is a big
Yeah,
thing
they've
that
got a
you
lot
get.
of workshops and you can't make it to
Well, and
maybe a
sometimes,
fourth of them.
right, and sometimes you absorb what you know you're going to need to know, and until you've been in the job for a while, you don't realize how desperately
That's
you
true,
might
too.
need to know some other information. So it wouldn't hurt any of us to go back and have a refresher, no matter how long we've sat up here, because I understand what you're saying. Mike said something similar to me, like, well, you know, how did you find all that out? And I said, well, because it's in the Indiana code. And, well, how do you look that up? Well, so, you know, just showing him how to go through that and look those things up. I think those are important things to know as councilmen, because we can get advice no matter what. No, we're not attorneys, but I think it is our responsibility to double check things and raise questions. And you all have heard me do it before a couple times, that different things that needed to happen. So for that reason, I would be okay with going ahead and pursuing, looking for an individual. I think we need to be very careful about what we would set out as to how that person would be used and how we would decide, you know, access to that person. Because I know that we do not want to spend the public's money unnecessarily. I think, you know, we need to watch. And it would be so easy to, oh, good, here's another person we can pick up the phone and call. And pretty soon you've racked up a pretty hefty bill when we could have, you know, talked to some of our other resources and gotten the same answer, so.
Diane, that's what's sort of where I'm stuck. A, do we even need one based on what we already have? It just appears like it's becoming a NASA project with lots of ways to cover, which is it even necessary? And then the next thing I would be concerned about what you've said is those that are proposing this, or the individual on the board, I'd want definite protocol. Because, again, back to my wife analogy, if we're paying for an attorney, I'm going to be there. Shouldn't I be there? I'm not going to rely on, well, you said this or they said that, and please tell me over a cup of coffee. And I just would be very concerned about protocol.
Well,
And-
if the council hires an attorney, there is no secrets between council members. So if
Or
councilmen,
between the council, any
Between
council
the
member
council
and that
member.
attorney.
right, so if you call the attorney, he can tell me what you said and what you called about, and when you called, and the discussion that you had. So that would be open access.
The
But I
only
can check
issue
on
that
that.
that's going to lead to possibly is you all may have conflicts with each
Right.
other on
Surely not.
what direction you're going, but,
I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see him playing a role in that, though.
well, I guess the point is, sometimes it's the same situation I find myself in. You may have one thing you want to have accomplished, you may have something different, you may have something different, and you try to give your best answer to all three of you, because mostly it's just a legal answer. But I think your counsel attorney may end up with the same stuff, so it might not be as easy as all of you having access to that attorney and hoping that your conflicts with each other don't carry over to what he's able to do for you.
And related to that, the layman here speaking, we're talking to our council attorney. My first question would be, why didn't you talk to the city attorney that we're already paying for? Why didn't you contact the state attorney that we're already paying for? Why go to number 3? I haven't talked to the attorney, but on the Board of Works or during budgeting, I see a legal bill, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I wasn't there. Yeah, but Jeff, we needed to ask questions of this attorney. Again, back to protocol and cost, those are big red flags for me.
Well, Mike, I kind of cut you off before, so we've strayed into that discussion. Well, you wanted to talk a little bit about procedure or how somebody might be used.
I just think it's good that we have somebody we can call and talk to about issues that we may be experiencing, that we know has our best interest as a legislative body at heart. I think, this is new territory. It's not been done before. I think you may see it more and more. We're progressive in so many other areas. Why not this one? We're not talking about a whole lot of money. I think it would be worth a try to see how it works. If it doesn't work, I'll be the first one to say this isn't working. I think it's worth a shot.
I would be in favor of doing a dual path of looking at having a council attorney with the idea that my first go-to, Scott, second go-to is the state, and find out how that works.
Yeah, that would be like a protocol, but that would seem to be sensible. The other thing that I have a concern about is, and I think we need to separate position from person, I don't think that the city council president should be the only one that has access. I think perhaps there should be a task force that both looks at protocol, and because if we're going to write a contract to go before the Board of Works, then we have to spell out what the steps would be in order to use this attorney, and then how that attorney would be contacted, who had access to contact that attorney, and then how, you have to set an upper limit as to how much could be spent, and, all those things need to be taken into consideration. And I don't think you should give any one person too much power. I also have a concern that this person not get 7 different calls from 7 different people that just want to chat, because that's an expensive conversation. And I don't think that's fair to the people out here that are paying the bill. And so, and I don't, I think we've established task force for many other things. We just talked about our not-for-profit. Our wage and salary task force met this morning with our human resource director. I think it might be appropriate to have a task force, both to set up the protocol, to talk about how in the world you're going to decide on who the attorney is going to be when you can't really interview anybody unless you do it in a public meeting. That's problematic to me. How you're going to go about that, and several things like that, I think it would be a good idea to really dig into those things. But I'm willing to hear how the rest of you think that might work, if there's another proposal as to how this might work.
I'm still having trouble after 20 years of doing this, of getting to step number 3. I can't speak for this group, but new relationship with Scott, my years with Mike, knowing I've done it, and I know members of this board have done it, you contact the state. The mayor reminding us that our department heads, people we contract with, they oftentimes have lawyers to help give us advice with legal. Again, I'm having a hard time, Diane, just getting to step 3. And then if I get there, what would the protocol look like? And that sort of concerns me. Well, it may not cost that much, or it isn't that big of a fee. Well, how do we know that? And whether I use step 3 or not, I'm going to ask 2,500 people that I represent to pay for it on top of what they're already paying. And so it's just I'm taken aback a little bit, sort of surprised. Scott, I don't have a problem. If I do have a problem, I will contact you. And we've talked before, and I appreciate that, and not afraid to do that. And also contacting Indianapolis. It would concern me if we are going to go to step 3, Diane. It may be members of this board are thinking, I can't talk to our city attorney. I don't want to talk to somebody down in Indianapolis. I want a third attorney. I want to bypass those two. And I want to have another attorney from somewhere. I don't know if the group is thinking. I know that Mr. Shoemaker sent me a name of an individual that's been discussed, and I don't know if he lives in the city of Warsaw or not. I don't think he does, but how would we go about that? Just selecting an attorney right now without doing any research or getting an executive summary from a task force or another group. I would be thinking, Jeff talking, I would want a lawyer that lives on Main Street in our community, that knows what's going on, is here, especially if this group is thinking just somebody on call. I wouldn't want somebody that we're going to specifically pay for at step 3 to be from another community, but maybe arguments could be made, no, it would be better for that, somebody on the outside. Again, just these questions that are just bouncing around.
I think when we try and do something new in the city, when we try and be a little bit progressive, the one thing that I've always tried not to do is reinvent the wheel. And my suggestion, I've talked to a few people that have seen this become a miserable failure and just become a way to spend a lot of money and not get the benefit that was intended originally. I would suggest, as Diane did, that you get a hold of some communities, some third-class cities that have used this successfully.
There aren't any.
And find out I'm just telling you.
I tried.
That would be my recommendation, is to find out what's the way to get this done. Folks, I have been told that it doesn't work, that it becomes someone's private attorney. Everybody uses it kind of as their private attorney. Most of it's duplicative with the city attorney. But I don't want to say that because I don't want to discourage. If you feel like that there's a reason to do it and you need somebody, it's your call. But the difficult part of this is that, your attorney someone should speak to that attorney about collective desires of the council. That's the hard part, not individual desires. And that's what I've been told is the difficult part about trying to set something like this up. And I respect that there's the need to have alternate opinions. As I've said, we've got a city attorney, the AIM attorney, we've got the public access counsel, we've got a bond attorney, we've got a employment law attorney, and anytime we hire somebody for any special project that's, they're always available. Randy and Rampala has always been available for you all. And I know you've taken advantage of it and talked to him. And that's probably the type of concerns that you have when you're getting into big projects, something special that we don't do a lot. And, we all need that help. So I'm just saying, what I've heard is that it's difficult to try and come up with a protocol that works, that's going to give you what you want.
Jack, I want to revisit your comment. Because I think maybe you hit on something that many people are thinking at this, as we discuss this further, that we had more people, access to more people than we thought about using, before. But you mentioned that you would want to know more about using the city attorney, using this state attorney, and then how we might use a council attorney. And I guess there are two ways that we could approach this at this point. We could, by consensus, agree that we want to investigate this further, and then discuss how we're going to go about that investigation. Or we could, by consensus, decide that we don't want to pursue it, and just stop right now. And so I think that is the main question right now. Now, my question to you up here, it's not necessary, but we advertise this as part of our agenda tonight. Do you want to hear anything from the public that's here?
No.
I think an
not-
appropriate time to hear from the
Time.
public might be once we have something to present, like this is what we
Not
think
this
we
time.
should do and move forward, but
Diane, I'd ask that maybe, I think there's been a lot of good points made. I think it makes sense for maybe 3 to sit down as a committee and talk about maybe the resources that are available, how we should do better at utilizing those resources, and then have that person that's necessary, if we've exhausted all those, if you set the protocol up to utilize all the resources that we have, that we're paying for. Our city attorney, he doesn't turn the meter on when you call. We've got, our contract is set up for so many hours a month. Sometimes we're low, sometimes we're a little high. But the bottom line is.
have we had a low month yet?
It's the way Mike Valentine always thought it was fair to do it that way, because then you can call and you don't have to worry about that. And maybe that's what, maybe looking at what we have and how we utilize what we're already paying for, and then create a spot for, if there's a need to just get another opinion. I think to me, that would be my opinion, but I know this is your decision.
The other thing we can do is we can table it for this evening and bring it back up again at the next meeting, but I think you won't be here.
I will not be here at the next meeting.
I don't know if anybody else is going to be gone. I guess it's really at your pleasure whether you, first of all, I guess we should get a sense as to whether or not you want to pursue looking into this, so.
Well, I can see that there's logistical issues and protocol issues. I do know that there are times that I wish I would have had access to somebody I could pick up the phone and talk to. And I would still like to know that resource is there for me or anyone. How we go about that, I don't know exactly. I want to be open about it. I want everyone to have the same opportunity and the same access. But I do feel that we need to pursue it.
Jerry, how do you feel?
Well, I think there's been a few times I've thought I'd like to ask somebody a question. Didn't know exactly how to go about doing it. So, whereas if we had somebody that was appointed that we knew, that everybody knew that they could go ask a question.
And at this point, you're referring to a question that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking the city attorney?
Probably.
You don't know, okay. Ron?
I think we should pursue it.
Jeff?
I still have questions why, the need, but it appears that there are several on this board that want to do that. Boy, I would be looking for something, lots of research and homework that's been done to explain the need to go 3 deep. Jerry didn't talk about contacting the state. Have you ever contacted the state?
No, I
Turner?
never have.
All right. You know, how many times have you felt, I've never heard a complaint from any member in my 20 years or any member on this board that we need another attorney. The city attorney, the state attorney, all that's in front of me is just not enough. I need another one. I would need an education on that. I would need help clarifying why we need to go 3 deep. And then, if you can convince me of that, then it gets back to what Diane and others have said. Now we're getting into very, very deep water. In my mind, I need educated on this protocol and how that would work. This would be a major step for a third-class city. According to Diane, maybe the only one in the state.
Scott and we've both looked and we've not been able to find another.
Yeah, I talked with Diane and I tried to get some guidance on how it might look. And I really have asked about all my resources, and I've just been told to the people I think would know that it doesn't exist elsewhere in the state for a third-class city council to have their own attorney. So there wasn't guidance out there for me to get a roadmap on what that would look like.
And the government teacher in me, related to what our attorney told us earlier, is that this is, like it or not, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but we have one-party government right now. And usually we need to get another attorney because there is divided government. There is division. The minority or the minority is wanting something that they can't get. So what do? To defend or complain, you get an attorney to help you. That's 101. And that again would be my questions, my concerns, my red flags from my seat. Appreciate your patience with me tonight.
Jack?
Well, like before, I would like to at least pursue the chance to get one. At least look into it a little bit deeper. You say Jody Woods is the person?
Yeah, and I'll be happy to send
Okay.
you all of her contact information.
I just pulled it up. For those of you who want it, it's Jody Woods, 317-237-6200, extension 222. And
Elected
She'll
officials
probably-
only.
yeah. She'll be my first contact as I
And-
look into this.
Yeah, and frankly, I asked her again last week and she hasn't gotten back to me yet, and she may be on vacation.
Diane, I would just ask maybe you put together a group of 3 and explore the desires of the council and look at, again, the protocol is going to be, to me, it's more important to establish how you're going to use the individual, because you're going to have a contract with them and you're going to have to fund it. But more importantly, how are you going to use the individual? And I think I'm hearing a little bit of difference here, but, again, I would ask that you look at the resources that we've already paid for and that you have, and then how this individual would fit into that, and maybe come back with some more information and maybe have another discussion about it.
So, again, that's the mayor's suggestion, but it is up to you as the council. Do you agree with the idea that we would go ahead and form a task force and start looking into this more thoroughly?
Yeah, just see where it takes us. It may take us, parts unknown. We may decide not to, we may decide to do it. And I think it's worth pursuing.
I would request, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I would request that the petitioner on this board that I'm a member of, or the group, the task force, whatever you want to call it, would have history, would have far more details than just an agenda item, which we're starting the discussion.
Right.
But if we're going to continue this, need and protocol, I think I need a lot more in front of me. I think the people I represent do. I think this community does. I certainly think that the mayor, our city attorney, and the state of Indiana would like to know why and how we're doing this need and protocol. So I would want far more in front of me, just respectfully asking those that would want to continue in this exercise before we bring it up in public again.
I think that's reasonable.
So here's a suggestion, and you tell me if this fits the bill, then I would ask you to contact me privately if you're interested. I mean, go home and really think about this, because this is going to take some work and some meetings, you know, outside of here in order to prepare. I'll need 3 people that are willing to work on this and do some research and get ready. And I have a feeling there may be more than 3 people that want to do this, and so I guess if you trust me to use my judgment, I don't know how to say it, but, you know, if you can let me know what you're willing to do and what your interest is, and then I can appoint a task force before the next meeting so that you can get started.
All right.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, now I'll be gone at the next meeting, so I would like to know that we have a month to talk to you before we discuss this again in public.
We could certainly do that. Yeah, we just want to wait until August
Yeah.
and that's certainly fine with me.
Once again, I am in the minority, but I've been through many different things like this. I go back to the DEER task force that was created in that reduction effort years ago. It took, as the chairman of that task force, Mayor, thanks for sitting on that, as well as other members in the community tonight, it took me over a year to even get close to drafting a proposal for the council. 1 year. And so I would caution, Mike, you saying do we have a month or two? I would really hope that time of the essence, you know, that phrase that we hear, I would hope that you would really take your time with this major proposal, need and protocol, to be prepared, not feel like you have to get it back to me in a month. And maybe I'm saying
What I'm
that.
saying is I'd like to
Yeah.
not have anything happen for at least.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what I
okay,
thought. Yeah,
yeah.
not having
Okay,
to
I-
happen. And
Maybe I misunderstood you, but yeah.
That's what I thought you meant. And then we would, so there'd be a public announcement of the task force, first or second meeting in August. We'll be dealing with budget hearings at that time too, and those certainly demand our full attention at that time as
Yeah.
we meet with departments and that type of thing. So it may be, you know, until September, October, when we have that little lull in there that you can really dig into this. But, so each of you just give it some thought, and, you know, if you'd be willing to serve, then let me know, and I will put that together with your consensus. I'm seeing shake, so I'm gonna take that as consensus unless somebody jumps up and says no. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
So I can be clear, it's the consensus of the council then to come up with people to
appoint a
volunteer
They're
for
just
the task
continuing their
force.
discussion.
Yeah, and-
Yeah.
Period.
appoint a task force.
Please note in the minutes that I'm against it.
Okay,
Okay.
I will.
All right. Other matters come before the council.
I see that some of you have not picked up your utility reports, been in your boxes back there since beginning of May. This would be through March, and I know that we've been wanting to keep an eye on how those bills are coming in, so you might want to do that. And then just a reminder that you can meet with any department head that you want to ahead of budget time, and I'd encourage you to do that if you have questions or just want to get a sense of how the department's going or anything like that. A lot of you drop in on certain departments regularly because you're appointed to work with them, or you just are regularly involved with them, and I think it's good that we each have separate interests, but it's always good to visit a department that you don't know a lot about. You want us all to visit you, right, Brian? Yeah, at 1
At 1
o'clock.
o'clock, right?
At 1 o'clock you can go. I've been out there, yeah.
I would just ask that you hold off till the end of this week, because I'm still meeting with the department heads to finalize their budgets, so it would
Yeah.
make sense to hold off on that, just until next week.
Yeah, so, okay.
All right?
I've already met with a few.
Any other items carry forward, Lynn?
I don't have anything.
Any visitors' questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Sarah McNeil Strahan Linfesti, and today I'm approaching the board with a simple question. My question is, what can be done in our community to keep it safe? With the recent 2 fatalities that have happened on Husky Trail, it has been very troubling. On January 22nd, 2016, Sharon Mitterling passed away to injuries sustained in an automobile accident on Husky Trail. She happened to be a longtime friend of mine. On June 10th, 2019, Gideon Cook passed away from sustaining injuries in an automobile accident on Husky Trail. So again, I ask the council, when can our children and our residents in our community be safe again? What ways are we being explored to ensure safety to all of our residents on Husky Trail? I have been working in the Glad Street addition, talking to the residents there, which it has been a concern for several years now. Once the school was built, that was a major issue and concern. The children in that district are required, if you live 1 mile closer to the school, you are to walk to school. My son was a student at Harrison Elementary School and was a proud Husky. My son also had to go through the neighbor's yard to go to school. So he would walk through the back of our neighbor and go to the school that way to ensure that he was safe traveling on Husky Trail. Today, I am hoping that the voices of the residents there in that district will be able to be heard finally, and that we will be able to resolve some issue here in our community to keep our residents safe and our children. Whether it be a flashing red light that warns the people who are traveling there on that road, hello, there is a school there, or a traffic area signal where you can have a traffic light there. Just to get the people's attention that there are children there, that there are children who are going to and from school. I understand that this should not be a big issue per se with traffic flow. Our traffic flow should never be more important than the lives of our children and our residents. And so we are asking that City Council will hear us, that they will end up moving quickly in this matter to resolve the issues here in this area. And I just want to take the opportunity, because I do know that we all can agree that we care about our children in our community, and we also care about the residents who live here, and that we will be able to solve this issue. And I know you guys can solve this issue of figuring out ways that we can end up having a light and making sure our children are safe going to and from school. So I also want to make sure I thank you guys for the opportunity to allowing me to speak this evening and hearing the voices and the concerns of the residents over on Husky Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. So to address your question, and I'm very thankful that you've brought it up in a very professional way, a very caring way. I'm very sorry that those individuals were friends of yours, and that makes it really difficult. I met with superintendent and their traffic people, with our traffic commission president, with our lieutenant. We met within a few days after the accident, and I asked them to start gathering data, speed data, counts, look at the different options for intersections. It's a bigger problem than each one of those individual accidents with regards to, as you suggest, it's that mile radius where the kids are having to walk to school. We've addressed issues with trying to manage the snow removal so that they had a safe place to walk. A few years ago, when that gal was tragically killed on Husky Trail crossing the street, I went to the post office and asked that they move all the postal boxes on the other side of the street, which they complied with. There's probably a lot of little steps. I know the Traffic Commission is going to look at all the different options. There's flashing yellows, flashing reds, traffic signals, a roundabout, stop signs at that intersection, different routes. But you're right, something's got to give. And we will, at our July Traffic Commission meeting, members of the council who are on that will hear the first pass of concerns that, or at least the data that's coming forward, the speed data, what the average speed is out on Husky Trail, what the traffic counts are, and then looking at codes that allow us to change those traffic signals. You know, we have to come up with a solution. But this is something that we're working with the schools, hand in hand, obviously, because it's a critical problem. We feel crossing guards are critical and important. The school obviously has their transportation department that has to try and make policy, and those are issues. That's policy that the school board and the schools are going to have to change if necessary. And the city is right there with the schools in assisting them in any way we can to make those kids' travels to school safer. And I was saddened deeply by that young man, as we all were up here. There's not anybody that didn't really shed a tear over that. It was a very tragic thing, and you know, poor little guy. It just happened. But we're looking at what the issues are, and we're going to sit down with the school and the Traffic Commission and try and come up with some concrete answers.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know one of the other things that I saw over there was just recently, they did have the speed box that would tell everybody, and then now the speed box has been
Right.
removed. Is there a reason for that?
Well, what they did was they had put that out there, and they have actually looked at year by year how that average speed is changing, if it's changing. It was just gathering data. You're right, it's a deterrent as well. It's hard to know with this accident if that was really a factor, because the individual that was involved was coming off of a side street. So there's a lot of issues, but speed is certainly one of them, and that traffic speed monitor was just being used to gather data.
Okay.
And that may be one of the recommendations, that go out there full time. So we ask you to be patient. In the the July Traffic Commission meeting, we'll sit down and look at this pretty hard.
Alrighty.
All right?
Okay. Thank you so much for answering our questions.
Anybody else?
Jack, I know you're on Traffic Commission, and one of the things I think that our community needs to look at is school speed zones, because we have them listed hourly, and they are not very applicable when there's a school delay because of snow or something like that, or like this in the summer. But what I do know about kids and playgrounds is they're going to try to cross the street if there's a playground that they can get to and use. And so I think in the meantime, while we're addressing that, all the residents in the city and that travel through our city need to remember that if there's a school, there's kids, and you should slow down. And just because it's 9:31 instead of 9:30, and you try to speed up to 35, and you're right there at that intersection. I travel that intersection, as many of you do, because the Y is right there. And so that's right where you have to turn to go to the Y as well. And I see the people speed up and slow down, looking, at their watches. And if you go by time of day instead of common sense, then people are going to get hurt. So, in a lot of states and places, if there's a school there, the speed zone is low, and it doesn't matter what time of day it is. It's just that speed is slowed down.
So the
And-
Traffic Commission's gonna
Yeah.
take a look at
But I
all those
just wanted to
factors.
say that to Jack, since he sits on there, and
Yeah.
Cindy
Yeah.
does as well, but she's
And
not
then maybe
here
one of
tonight.
the things that we look at,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll look at it, it's exacerbated by the fact that there's two main routes north from Warsaw, and that's one of them. And it gets heavier and heavier traffic all the time. It's a bad place for a school. We're gonna be looking at it hard.
Yeah, I see the same thing down on Smith Street.
Mhm.
That's another place where I
And-
just see people
And that's one that
heading through there.
just driving it, you have a tendency to drive a little slower than you would on Husky Trail, which is wide open now, and you
Yeah.
got all this traffic going. It's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a challenge.
When is the next meeting that is available for the public to be able to listen to get information from, for the Traffic Commission?
Traffic Commission, let me look.
We have a traffic commission meeting this Wednesday.
Yeah, I think it is,
It's probably on your board path.
it got bumped,
Oh, did it? Oh, yeah, it got bumped a week because of the 4th.
yeah.
That's right. You're right.
I don't have it on here.
So is it the 10th then?
Yeah.
Traffic Commission is on the 10th of July at 1 PM here in City Hall, is what it says on the webpage.
And that's an open meeting, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you,
Yep,
yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Well, I know nobody likes to listen to me, but I think that spot right there, I think that spot right there would be an ideal spot for a four-way stop. It would be easy to do. I've heard people say, well, people's used to speeding through there. Well, you set a policeman out there for about 2 weeks, getting some tickets written, and that would slow a lot of people down. If they know they gotta stop, they'll stop. Or at least slow down, so if somebody jumps out in front of them, they got plenty of time to slam on their brakes. And it's cheap, 4 stop signs.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of suggestions and ideas at the Traffic
gonna be a
Commission.
long
That'll
meeting.
probably be one of
It's
them.
gonna be a long meeting.
Again, it's just a situation that,
It's just tragic situation.
it's a tragic situation, and, you just want to try and ensure that it doesn't happen again, but it's going to take everybody. It's going to take school system, it's going to take, like you said, Diane, the neighbors, and any assistance the city can give with regards to traffic signals, with enforcement. We're all in it, and we don't want it to happen again.
In every school, not just that one. Yeah, all the schools.
All the schools. I was even looking at ways that can be done through our state. So working with some legislation and issues and trying to make sure that we keep our children safe.
Absolutely.
It's good.
All right, anybody else? Dave?
I know it's late, so I'll be brief, or at least I'll try to be brief. Anyhow, I take the recycling over and I separate my recycling stuff. So I know there, I'm throwing the magazines, newspapers, cardboard. And in the one dumpster, here's a mattress, and another one, there's a piece of furniture, and then in another one, somebody had thrown a big piece of, some windows in there, which none of that stuff is recyclable, and it irritates me, because I know that they have to pay to have all that stuff hauled away, and if they throw it in there, it ruins the whole load. I would encourage the city council maybe to consider an ordinance or a fine for people throwing that stuff in there to offset the cost of the recycling, have to put dumpsters there for all that other stuff.
You're talking about over here?
Solid
Yeah,
Waste Management,
recycle.
Solid Waste Management District is well aware of that. Jerry sits on that, as do I. Those are designed for those residents, probably more out-of-city residents who don't have the curbside recycling. The city doesn't have control over that. Certainly, the Solid Waste Management District's got cameras up, and they try and handle that. I mean, we have similar issues with televisions getting put on the side of the road, and you're exactly right, Dave. It's anything that looks like it's a appealing place to dump gets dumped. And
I realize it's a small thing, it just irritates me.
no, I agree with you. Jerry,
I
any
know,
comments?
Well, Tom's got those cameras, and if he can get a license plate number off of it, he tries to do that.
Yeah.
He really he does. He's on top of it, trying to do it anyway.
And then the second thing was, real quick, I was going down Market Street, and anyhow, coming toward me is a car and somebody on a bicycle. So I had, the options were to hit the guy head on, the bicyclist head on, or just stop in the middle of the street. So I stopped in the middle of the street.
Good.
The point of that, though, is you don't want to hit, whether the bicyclist was going the wrong way and he was not adhering to the right-of-way, if you run over him and you kill him or you hurt him, you feel bad regardless of whether you were in the right-of-way or not. And I know this sounds strange. But what it is, though, is the bicycle path is not marked. And I have brought this to several people that why is that bicycle path not marked?
Where?
Pardon?
Where?
On Market Street.
There's a
The
bicycle
wide
path.
sidewalk is supposed to be the bicycle path.
Right.
But I've had two people tell me that they were riding there and the police officer stopped them and told them you can't ride on the sidewalk, that you're supposed to ride in the street. So regardless, and I know that, and they're going like, well, that can't be. Well, I don't think these people lied to me. And all I'm really asking is, why don't we have signs that say this is the bicycle path? A simple thing, and I know that the Tourism Commission, we gave lots of money for just bicycle signs. So that'd be a simple way of resolving that issue so there's no question in anybody's mind, and so the bicyclists will stay off the street. So, because if I hadn't been paying attention, if I had the phone would ring or some other things that you're not supposed to be doing, but people do it anyway, or texting, I'd hit the guy head on. So the bicyclist, because you couldn't see him very well. So anyhow, that's all I had.
All right, Dave, thank you. Anybody else? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you all.
We'd like to hear from you that, Jerry.
Jerry, funny.
You guys have stuff to
That was
sign.
funny.
Huh?
Hey, Mike.
North Point,
Mike.
Clear Cross?